Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Populist Apologetics. I just wanted to make another update video in terms of what's been going down in terms of Wall Street and the retail investors versus the hedge funds. So here we are again on Wall Street Bets, and as you can see, there's been a whole lot that's gone down since the last video. People are basically talking about what's to come in terms of GameStop possibly having another moon phase, which basically means that the value in the stock is going to explode. And we can actually see that people are beginning to pick up the story a whole lot more, so much so that many members in Congress are beginning to talk about it, and we could see many more developments coming from that. Just like how we mentioned previously, Ted Lieu, Ted Cruz, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and a bunch of other people were talking about the injustice that the hedge funds were doing. We could actually see policy changes coming out of this in order to protect the small guy. Now, if we go over to this tab that I have on the side, we can actually examine further what's going on in this story. So now people are actually beginning to talk about how now it's not just Robinhood that's been basically giving retail investors and the working class the short end of the stick when it comes to investing, but how other apps are doing that as well. It's actually really interesting how so many people across different political spectrums are actually coming together on this single issue. And I just think it's really beautiful. Like I said in the previous video, we're actually beginning to see a widespread amount of people waking up to the fact that these millionaires and billionaires have been pitting Americans and just citizens of the world against each other along political lines in order for themselves to turn the largest profit by basically using the divide and conquer strategy. And coming over to this tab, we can basically see how people are talking about their losses that they've had and how they're still holding regardless, because basically what's to come is that these hedge funds that have basically been trading amongst themselves can't do that forever, and they're eventually going to have to either give or the people are going to have to give. And many of these people, of course, they have their morale, they have their convictions behind their efforts. Meanwhile, these hedge funds basically have dollar signs behind their efforts. So for example, if we come down here, we can see how people are talking about holding no matter what. And here we can actually see someone talking about their portfolio throughout the course of the day. They went from $34,000 to $10,000. And that's just a whole lot of damage that has been done to their portfolio. But regardless of that, they're holding. I actually saw a story of someone who's lost $10 million today alone, and they're still holding. So basically, what we can kind of see from this is that there's a collective effort to hold no matter what happens, because at the end of the day, the only way you lose is if you sell at a discount. And so if we actually come over to Biz now, we can see there's a similar feeling towards what's been going on. People are talking about how these hedge funds and these banks, they can't hold their breath forever, and they're eventually going to have to give up. And if we come into this tab that I have on the side, it talks about how GameStop has basically stopped the hemorrhaging in terms of the value that it's been losing recently. And that's actually something that's really great to see. And so in this tab, we actually see this person talking about how they've bought 50 shares in GameStop and they're wondering what's to come of it. Hopefully, they can see a large return in their investment. And so now coming over to Google, we can actually see a quick synopsis on what's been going down in terms of the stock market for GameStop and its evaluation in terms of individual shares. So as you can see, the day started off actually pretty well, although it was a slight dip from yesterday, which was around $300. It rose to $400 within an hour of opening, and then that's when the damage began. As you can see, around 10 a.m., that's when things got really bad, and it almost crashed, but it was from this point that people realized that they too could fight back, and even if they might have lost a battle, the war definitely wasn't over. And so we actually see this rising going on, and of course, there was this falling back, and then something interesting happened. As you can see, in the previous cycles of going up and down in terms of the stock value, each phase happened in roughly an hour or two. But then we see this spike here. Well, this spike is actually predicted to happen when you see this W form kind of happening. It goes down, it comes up, it goes down a little bit. It would go up more than it did the first time it went up. And we actually see this W form happening. But instead of it sustaining this bull run, it suspiciously tanked again. And so basically what people have surmised that happened in this period of time was that the different trading outlets such as Robinhood actually allowed its users to buy stocks for a little bit. And so then we see this rise in value as people began to buy in once more. But then, of course, buying on those platforms got locked, and people actually began to see their stocks for sell because they put in stop orders earlier in the week. And then Robinhood was fulfilling those stop orders early in order to appease the hedge funds that they are beholden to. And so we can see this sharp decline in stock value, and then things began to move sideways from there on out for the day. And so this is actually a story that will be told in all the other stocks that have been popular recently, Naked, Nokia, AMC, and BlackBerry, as a few examples, and we'll actually look at those real quick right now as well. Now, looking at Naked, you can see a similar phenomenon happening. It started out relatively low, but actually here it started above its previous close. It rose to around a maximum of $3.34 around the time of 10 a.m., and that's when things got bad. Things hit a minimum, again, at around 12. People began to pick up the slack, and then it began to push sideways from there on out. If we look at these after hours projections, we can see an upwards trend happening, and maybe even we could see some sort of step ladder effect happening from there on out. But that's just wishful thinking. Although I do believe that the hedge funds and the banks will eventually have to give way, I don't know if it will be that soon. So now let's look at Nokia to see what happened for them. As you can see once more, things started out pretty well and things tanked. People began to fight back, and then things pushed sideways. And now if we look at AMC, we can see that things actually started a little bit lower than they did on the previous day. But once more, the story of things rising at around 10 a.m., they hit their maximum for the day. They tanked. People began to fight back, and people were eventually able to get the stock value to just push sideways and maybe even see an increase in the following day. And then BlackBerry has a similar story to tell to AMC. It's opened below the previous close. It rose to around its maximum at 10 a.m. It fell. People fought back, and then things pushed sideways, and then we can see a slight rising in value once more. And so basically, what I want to get out of these charts is to show y'all that people's efforts to actually hold their stocks, even though they were drastically devaluing, actually seem to pay off as the hemorrhaging is stopped. And basically, we've hit more or less of a rock bottom, and things only look up from here for the little guy. And so what's going to happen on Friday is actually going to be really interesting to see. Will the idealist capitalists win, or will the corporatists get their way in the end? I think this is going to be a really interesting story to tell. Maybe it'll be so interesting to the fact that it'll end up in a couple history books. I think it definitely has the potential to be. So yeah, that's basically it for this video. If you enjoyed what had to be covered here, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you aren't subscribed already. Follow the Instagram at Populist Apologetics, and help this community grow so that we can more effectively spread the word about how the world has come to be the way that it is today. And that's basically it for me for this video. See you in the next one. Have a good one.